Welcome back to The Explainer. We've got a massive geopolitical situation on our hands today. Literally the kind of talks that could reshape the entire Middle East. We're talking about the US-Iran ceasefire negotiations. So here's the current situation. Iran just delivered its official response to the latest US ceasefire proposal. Now you might be wondering, what's in it? Well, officially, zero details have been released to the public. What we do know is that this highly anticipated message was meticulously passed to the Trump administration through Pakistani mediators who are playing a crucial role in all this. There's a lot of noise out there right now, so today we're cutting through it. We're going to look strictly at the frameworks and the leaks coming right from the negotiating table to break down exactly what both sides are pushing for.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the ceasefire proposal arrives. Then we'll look at Iran's red lines, the nuclear sticking point, the 14-point peace plan, and finally, the ticking clock. Let's unpack the mechanics of what's actually on the table.
Kicking things off with part 1, the ceasefire proposal arrives, and man, diplomacy is accelerating fast.
So from Tehran's perspective, they're framing their counteroffer as highly constructive. An Iranian official actually spoke to Al Jazeera and described the response as being delivered in a, quote, positive and realistic manner. Basically, they're signaling a very serious desire to end the regional war, specifically calling out Lebanon, and they want to resolve these ongoing disputes with Washington. They put the ball firmly back in the U.S.'s court.
But we have to immediately contrast that with what's coming out of the Oval Office. President Trump laid out a stark ultimatum stating that Iran has 1 week to respond to Washington's proposed peace deal. He did add that they've had very good talks and that it's very possible that we'll make a deal and it will be over quickly. But wow, talk about dramatic tension, right? On one hand, you've got Iran saying, hey, we're being realistic and positive. And on the flip side, the US president is dropping a strict, super urgent deadline to wrap this whole thing up.
Which brings us to part 2, Iran's red lines. Now, since those official details are under lock and key, we're relying on extensive reporting from diplomatic sources and Arab media to figure out what Iran absolutely will not compromise on.
Sources talking to networks like Al Mayadeen have laid out a really strict set of core requirements. First up, a ceasefire in Lebanon. Second, they want the restrictions on Iranian oil exports lifted. Now think about that for a second. That would send immediate ripples through global energy markets. Definitely something you'd notice at the pump. Third and fourth on their list, the complete removal of American sanctions and unfreezing all those Iranian assets held abroad. And finally, they want specific navigation arrangements in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a massive choke point for international shipping. For Tehran, ending this economic siege isn't just a request. It's an absolute non-negotiable red line.
But here's the kicker. The how is just as important to them as the what. Iran isn't just taking a verbal promise that sanctions will vanish. No way. They are demanding a clear and guaranteed mechanism to lift them. According to Iranian officials, they want international guarantees to make absolutely sure the U.S. actually follows through with whatever gets signed. They want to know this deal survives past the photo op of the signing ceremony.
Moving right along to part 3, the nuclear sticking point. Honestly, this is the absolute toughest hurdle in this entire negotiation.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how vast the gap is between the two sides, according to the Wall Street Journal. The U.S. is coming in with maximalist demands. They want Iran's nuclear facilities dismantled entirely, gone. But Iran, they've countered with a proposal to just dilute their enriched uranium stockpile and transfer a chunk of it to a third country. And they made it very clear, a country that is not the United States. And while they agree to pause uranium enrichment for a little under 20 years, Tehran is flat out refusing to bring in the wrecking ball. They are keeping their facilities intact.
Oh, and Iran also bolted a very specific fail-safe onto this proposal. They're demanding that if they do transfer that enriched uranium abroad, it has to be returned to them immediately if talks fall apart, or if the U.S. withdraws from the deal down the road. It's a glaring signal of just how cautious they are about handing over their stockpile. And honestly, it shows a ton of skepticism about the long-term durability of Washington's promises.
Let's move to and see how this builds into part 4. The 14-point peace plan.
So, after looking at and completely rejecting an earlier 9-point plan from the US, Iran drafted their own comprehensive 14-point framework. It breaks down into 3 main stages. Step 1, get an initial ceasefire locked in. Step 2 introduces a dedicated 30-day negotiation phase. This is the window where both sides would actually sit down and hammer out those incredibly tense, complex details, like the nuclear issues we just talked about. And then step 3 is the big one, the ultimate goal, turning that temporary ceasefire into a complete, permanent end to the regional war. It's a very phased, step-by-step approach.
But woven into those points are some truly massive geopolitical goals.
This Iranian draft reportedly calls for the U.S. to end its blockade on Iranian ports, fully withdraw U.S. forces from the entire region, and cease all hostilities, which prominently includes Israel's war in Lebanon. So you see, Iran's proposal isn't just about their own borders. They are trying to restructure the entire military footprint of the Middle East. It's a colossal shift that would literally impact global security for decades.
Finally, we arrive at part 5, the ticking clock. Normally, negotiations of this size take years, but right now, both sides are running on very strict, conflicting timelines.
So the crucial point is how these deadlines conceptually clash. Think about it. In the span of just 24 hours, President Trump said the talks were very good, but then threw down a strict one-week deadline for Iran to respond to the U.S. peace deal. Meanwhile, Iran's framework demands a 30-day negotiation window, and that 30 days only starts after the fighting stops. The U.S. is pushing for a rapid, finalized deal in a matter of days, while Iran wants a structured, month-long diplomatic marathon post-ceasefire.
And that leaves us with a pretty massive question. With these deeply competing timelines and incredibly firm red lines on both sides, can a middle ground actually be found before the clock runs out? The stakes are astronomical right now, and the window for diplomacy is looking remarkably tight. We'll be keeping a very close eye on these clashes, especially that 30-day window versus the one-week deadline, and those demands for sanctions guarantees. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.